In the last couple of days, I have been having a lot of fun with stash busting projects. Sometimes, you just get in a mood where you want to use up some extra bits of yarn or half a skein that is not really big enough to do a bigger project. One of my favorite things to make, especially to gift, I have a lot of friends who have young kids. I love making these little collars. I think they're really cute. They're not the most practical gift or most practical accessory, but I do get a lot of feedback that little kids really like them. I'll go to M&J Trimmings probably later on, and I'll get some fun rhinestone buttons or kids buttons, like, I don't know, like animal figurine buttons, and they're just a cute little accessory. It takes a few minutes to make one of these, and they're a great way to use bits of yarn or especially colorful yarn or variegated yarn that is not enough to make an entire new big project. I just think they're so pretty, and you can make them as big or as small as you want. I'll link the inspiration pattern for these in the description box below. But they're pretty straightforward because they're just done sort of in the round, right? You don't connect them, but they're in the round. It looks like this. You can kind of figure out what you wanna do on your own if you understand the basic principle, and I think the basic principle is this is a multiple of 4 foundation double crochets. You can also do foundation single crochets or foundation half double crochets or just chain, whatever you like, just in a multiple of 4 for this particular collar. Um, it's helpful to do a few chains in the beginning to leave to use as a buttonhole, but you don't have to do that. You can just do it at the end if you don't wanna do that at the beginning too. So this is a multiple of 4, and then it's a double crochet, skip a chain, V-stitch, double crochet, skip a chain, V-stitch, and you can see that here. Double crochet, skip a stitch, V, skip a stitch, double crochet, skip a stitch, V, skip a stitch, and you go all the way around. And then the next one, for every row you add, you do an extra 2 double crochets in each V-stitch, if that makes sense. So instead of doing a V-stitch with double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, it's 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet as your V-stitch, and then skipping a stitch, and the double crochet is the same all the way through. And then if you add another row, it's 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and I stopped after 4. So then I did 4 double crochets, chain 2, 4 double crochets, and then in between is always the same. It's skip a stitch, double crochet, skip a stitch, repeat your growing V stitch. And to finish it off, you can do a whole bunch of double crochets into the 2 chain space. And then to give it a little bit of a 3D effect, I did a little bit of back post. So you get this sort of 3D effect at the end. I will link these yarns below in case you want to try using these particular yarns. In other stash busting news, I saw a great video by Hooked by Robin. I love her channel. When I started crocheting and learning from YouTube 2 years ago, hers was one of the channels I would constantly go back to and refer to. She has so many amazing projects on there. They're very clearly explained. She's great at tutorials, and she also has a lot of explanations of basic technique and stitches, which I found so helpful. So I learned so much from Hope by Robin. She posted a tutorial this week about how to crochet small hexagons in Join As You Go, and she touted it as a really great stash busting project. And I thought, wow, like this is a technique I've always wanted to learn. I really dislike having a bunch of granny squares or little bitsy pieces, and at the end spending hours stitching them together or crocheting them together or whatever. I find that so tedious. It's not the worst, it's just so tedious. I've always wanted to learn Join As You Go. So I started with this one here. And these are sort of lighter weight yarns. These vary from maybe a DK to, I think that this is a heavy 4 weight or even a 5 weight yarn, just bits of yarn that I have left over. After I get down to the end of a skein, I will often just wind the rest into a ball and throw it into a mesh bag. So I have this giant mesh bag full of bits and pieces of yarn. So I started doing this. I didn't do this in any coherent way. Like some of these are a little bit more wonky than other ones. The technique is really great. I will link the video below. It just involves connecting the corners in a really secure fashion. And I think one of the most important lessons I learned from learning this technique and practicing it is the value of consistency, and that's one of the things I like the most about crochet is that it forces me to focus really hard on things like counting. I know that sounds so basic, and we all learn how to count and do arithmetic in elementary school, but focusing on something and doing something very precisely in detail with discipline and rigor. I really enjoy that. I think that that has been like a self-improvement thing for me that I really credit crochet with. I think it's cute so far. I'm not sure what this is going to turn out to be, and to be honest, I started to think about how I would even turn this into a project, and I wonder what I would do with the edges to make them a bit more uniform if I wanted to turn this into a blanket or something. So, TBD. So I practiced a little bit on this, and then I realized I have a lot of bulky yarn that I had done blanket projects with last year. So, I started this, and I started this with fewer colors. So I think it looks better when it's a bit more, and I wouldn't say this is planned out, but when it's a bit more uniform in color scheme. So I've started this and I thought I would do a little bit more of this. Most of these yarns are from Premiere. So I have some of them here. These were all from balls that I had wound, but most of them are either leftover bits of Premiere everyday bulky anti-pilling, which I really like, and I think this is so great for projects like blankets if you want something super soft and that's really nice to work with, like so pleasant to work with and really easy to work with. This was great for me when I was starting out, also because this is not a splitty yarn. It's the colors are so beautiful too. They're very vibrant. So I have some of that. And then I have some of the Premier Basics chunky, and here are some more Premier Anti-Pilling Everyday Bulky. So most of these are Premier bulky yarns. I think a couple of these two, are Lion Brand, and this was the last bit of that yarn that I had. I think it's Hometown. I'll link it below. I know what it looks like, so I'll find it on the Michaels website and I'll link it below. So I thought I would do a little bit of this, and I think I might expand the color palette a little bit. I feel like this could be a good runner for the bottom of a bed or something. I'm not really sure. It is a little bit stiff to be a blanket. I know I could make it less stiff by using a larger hook. I'm I'm actually using a very small hook. I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook, and most of these yarns call for a 9 millimeter. And this is because I personally prefer when I make hexagons and granny squares, I prefer that they're a bit tighter. I just like the look of it more. I don't really like a lot of holes in my crochet. I think there are some people who really excel at making loose and soft and and large gauge crochet really evenly, and I have not perfected that skill yet. I have not mastered that yet. So I like the uniformity and the density of using a thick yarn and a slightly smaller hook. I have tried doing so many shawls and blankets and things with large hooks and thick yarns, and I just find it like for me, the way that I crochet, for some reason, I find that my work comes out a little bit sloppier, and I like the neatness of this. So I also have this is the cream that I switched to. This is the Premier Basics Chunky in Mist. It's a slightly, I wanna say there's like a green undertone to this cream. I don't know if you can see it in the camera. Then I have a bit of this left over. So I think maybe we'll start with this because this is this color. This is my giant bag of wound up bits of leftover yarn. I will link the Hooked by Robin video below. So if you want to learn this technique from the master herself, you should definitely check it out. I find this to be really useful because I think after you learn how to join hexagons, you can take this technique and apply it to any other shape that you're crocheting. And I think that hopefully, I know that she has other videos on how to join granny squares, and I think those might be slightly different depending on how you want to join the granny squares. There are some really secure ways to join that I've noticed that she teaches that seem a little bit fiddly for me, but I want to try those too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Something I do that I know is not by the book is that instead of using a magic circle, I can do a magic circle, but it's not my favorite because sometimes I accidentally drop the end or something happens and it gets loose or I don't leave a long enough. Anyway, I just make a slip knot instead of doing a magic circle, especially working in bulky yarn. You can't tell that it's not a magic circle because the slip knot bit just gets eaten up by the first row. So if you struggle with magic circles too, then maybe you want to try a slip knot. So I need 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm excited to have a quiet weekend this weekend because I've had a very social week this week. I don't know if you also feel this way. I don't really know how I used to do so much every day. For 20 years, I worked in mainstream corporate big media for fashion and food. I was a fashion editor for a long time, for about 10 years, and then I was a food editor for a long time, and then I would just bop between fashion and food. And I can't believe I used to do so much. I was working in digital media when digital media first started to really fall apart as business because the business plan that a lot of the executives came up with in early days of digital media just was not a sustainable business plan, or there was just no strategy behind it really, and it was a big game of whack-a-mole for about 10 years. So I was working a lot. I would get up sometimes at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning to start working from home, and then I would get ready and I would go to the office, and then I would work in the office all day. Sometimes I would go for lunch meetings or have to run out for meetings with brands or do reporting during the day. So I was in and out of the office and then also managing teams. And then after work, I would oftentimes go for drinks with friends or publicists or have to go to events for brands. And then after that, I would also go for dinners, and I was doing that maybe 3 or 4 times every single week. Now, granted, when I started the industry, I was in my 20s, so I had a lot more energy. So maybe that's a part of it, but I do feel like there was something about the COVID slowdown where everyone started working from home, and we were very lucky to be able to have a job where we could work remotely and that the internet was at the place it was where we could have Zoom meetings and things like that. But ever since then, the pace of life has slowed down so much that now I freelance. And so I work mostly from home. And this week, for example, I went out to dinner twice, 2 days in a row, once with my sister and once with my friend Leo. And then by Saturday, I was like, "I can't leave my apartment." Like, I'm so tired that I can't leave my apartment, and I'm just gonna stay in and talk to nobody. I feel like I mean, I also feel lucky that I am more of an introvert, so the pandemic and all those years really spotlighted for me my preference for quietness and for staying home. These, by the way, are some of my favorite scissors to have in my crochet kit. These are the Slip and Snip. That's what they're called. I bought them at the store in New York over a decade ago, and it was a themed store where every few months they would switch geographical locations. So they happen to be running something where it was all items that were made in America. And these scissors are made in the USA and they're so clever. Look, they fold down to like almost nothing. They are TSA compliant, so you can take them on planes. This is so useful on long trips when I'm crocheting on long trips. And they're surprisingly effective. They're sharp. They're not like, see, you don't have to struggle with them. They're better than a lot of the big scissors I've owned. So I love these. And I talked my parents into buying some too. I'll link these down below in case you want to get a pair for yourself. I think you can buy them on Amazon now. But make sure you get the ones that are branded Slip and Snip and they're made in the USA because I think honestly the quality has been amazing. They've lasted so long. I've never had to sharpen them. They're still shiny. They look new. They haven't gotten scratched up. I love these. I think these are some of the best crochet kit scissors. So I went out for dinner twice this week, 2 days in a row, and I went to the same restaurant 2 days in a row because it's brand new in New York City. Din Tai Fung is a Taiwanese restaurant chain where they specialize in dumplings, specifically soup dumplings, or in Chinese they're called xiaolongbao, which means small, steamed in a bamboo thing dumplings. I think that's the translation. But these are dumplings that have hot soup in them as well as some kind of stuffing. So usually vegetables and meat. Din Tai Fung makes some of the best ones. And what's great about them is that even though they have like 170 stores or restaurants all across the world, their training is so specific and so precise, kind of like crochet, how it's very precise. I like precision and I like discipline and I like rigor. All of their dumplings weigh about 21 grams, and they have precisely 18 folds in the top of the dumpling. So you have a really great consistent experience every time you go to a Din Tai Fung, although the characteristics of every Din Tai Fung restaurant feels a little bit different. So this is the very first Din Tai Fung in New York City and on the East Coast. I kind of can't believe it took them this long to open on the East Coast, but I'm thrilled they're finally here. It is the biggest Din Tai Fung in the entire world. I've been to Din Tai Fungs in Taipei, at Taipei 101, that huge tower in Taipei, and I've been in London, in Las Vegas, in LA, and in Hong Kong. And they're just delicious. It's like really it's great comfort food for me. They have noodles, they've got rice cakes, they've got dumplings, they have steamed buns. Oh my gosh, they have this amazing dessert that's a chocolate steamed bun filled with molten chocolate, and then if you ever go, definitely order a it's like a side of, like, heavy cream, it's a little bit whipped, but they put a little bit of sea salt in it. So you take this chocolate steamed bun that's filled with molten chocolate, and you dip it in this salted heavy cream. It is so good. I'd never had it until this week because I usually don't order dessert at Chinese restaurants, it's not like a thing that I grew up doing. So anyway, because Din Tai Fung just opened in New York City, I, went all out and got dessert. It is amazing. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I also have plans to go back to Din Tai Fung on Tuesday with my friend David for lunch. And then I've organized a group dinner there in August. So yeah, most of me is thrilled, and part of me is like, am I kind of crazy for going to the same restaurant so many times in 1 month? But what I have found is that because everyone's been so excited that Din Tai Fung is opening in New York City, reservations are so hard to get that I feel like if I don't go early and often, it's gonna be a long time before I'm able to get in again. So I'm basically like panic eating dumplings, if that makes sense, or if it doesn't make sense. I don't know. I put a poll on my YouTube channel the other day because I kind of want to know how often do you go to your like absolute favorite restaurant? And I'm not talking about super fancy favorite restaurants. Like I have my favorite, like ultra fine dining restaurants in New York, but I can't afford to go there all the time. But for a regular restaurant, like something that's not that expensive, that feels casual, that you can wear like sneakers to and jeans to, like sort of a place that feels every day, but where the food is really great and the service is really great and the vibes are really good. Your favorite places, how often can you go there in 1 month before it starts to feel unreasonable? And I'm trying to think in the past. I have a friend, there's this really amazing Italian restaurant in New York City called Torrisi, and I have a friend, he's more of an acquaintance, but we're friendly and we have a lot of friends in common, but when Torrisi it was really hard to get a reservation at Torrisi, and I've been lucky enough to go maybe 5 or 6 times with friends, sometimes I make the reservations, sometimes my friends make the reservations, but I remember he joined our table one time and he was like, "Yeah, I've been here 117 times." I was like, "Are you kidding?" He's like, "No, he's serious." And it's because he was doing sometimes he would do 2-a-days there, he loved it so much. I mean, the food was amazing there, and if I could swing a reservation, I understand it. Like, I would have gone a million times to Torrisi. Now it's, like, extra hard to get in because everyone knows about it. It's been open for a couple of years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let me know in the comments below how often a month you go to your favorite restaurants. My friend Auntie and I had a very short-lived podcast based on a long story from a long time ago, and the podcast was called Chinese Food Fight Club. You can still find it on YouTube. We have a channel. I really enjoyed doing it. I think, there's a lot to be said about Chinese food in America, and as a former food editor, I'm really interested in it. I've done a lot of reading on it. One of my favorite books is Jennifer Atley's The Fortune Cookie Chronicles. If you have a chance, I would say I don't know what the audiobook is like, but, I bet it's a really good audiobook because it's very story driven, but the book itself is actually a really breezy read for something that is nonfiction, and I learned so much from it. I think she opens with this anecdote about how how in the lottery, specifically Mega Millions, you know how, like, the 2nd prize or the 3rd prize, the one where you guess 5 numbers correctly, you get $250,000, and usually for every jackpot, maybe 1 person wins that or 2 people win it, but there was one time that a bunch of people won it. They had all chosen the same numbers, and it's because they had all ordered Chinese food the night before, and they had all played the lucky numbers from their fortune cookies. And in the United States, there are less than a handful of companies that manufacture fortune cookies and write those fortunes and pick those lucky numbers. So yeah, the prevalence and the ubiquity of Chinese food in America is incredible. When you look at it, I think the statistic is that there are more Chinese restaurants in the United States than all of the fast food chains combined, which I don't know if it's still true because we have way more fast food now than when the book was written, but I believe that the statistic included McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's. So, either way, it's a wild number. I think food is one of the best ambassadors for cultures because it's something that people can engage with and that people can relate to, and it feels like something you can share, and there's also, like, the literal idea of breaking bread across the dinner table and sharing food. That's something really profound, and I think it really helps build bridges between communities and people. So that is how this is coming together. On Saturday, when I was trying to figure out why I was so social lifed out, I also realized it's because one of my favorite people was in town in New York this week. I mentioned last week that I think I'd hurt myself by crocheting, and that one of the things that I had done over the past couple of months when I stopped crocheting was do these unilateral or isolation exercises that I learned about online. I've always had imbalances, or at least I've been aware of the imbalances in my body ever since I started lifting weights about 5 years ago. I started lifting weights when I was in Hong Kong. It was right before the pandemic, and Hong Kong was going through a lot of social unrest, and so sometimes there would be restrictions on what you could and could not do. Some restaurants would be closed at night, and I figured since there were restrictions, I might as well channel my energy into something productive. And so I started working out. It turned into kind of something a little bit dysfunctional because I joined a transformation gym, and when you join a transformation gym and your trainer's bonus is based not on your health but how much weight you lose and how quickly you lose it, I think their incentives for getting you somewhere and telling you what to do is very different than your personal what would be best for your personal well-being. So, I had a trainer who had every good intention, I think, but didn't really have the foresight to understand that putting me on a crash diet for an extended amount of time and then also tasking me with walking 15 to 18,000 steps a day, which I really enjoy doing, which is great. I mean, these were all positive transformation changes in my life, except for the severe calorie restriction that he put me on. But during that process, I did learn that I had some imbalances, and I think some of them come from, I don't know, it could be like residual things from spraining my ankle a lot of many, many years ago, and then having never really recovered properly from it or falling down some stairs one time and never really thinking much of it. But your body does compensate and grow and develop around those injuries, even if they're minor. So pretty quickly, I realized that I had a left-right imbalance in my glutes and my adductors, potentially from either walking funny or wearing funny shoes or some kind of imbalance in my knees. I don't know. Who knows? I did go to a hiking it's not a hiking route. I went to the went back in the day in 2010 or 2009, The Biggest Loser. Do you remember that TV show? Very controversial TV show, also a crash diet TV show. So I have a long history with crash dieting. But The Biggest Loser licensed a group of resorts across the country. And these resorts were not connected before The Biggest Loser, but they did have licenses with The Biggest Loser, and I went to the very first Biggest Loser resort, which was in Utah. I really enjoyed my time, and it wasn't a crash diet there. They did take a very positive, healthful, and whole food centric and, like, very moderate approach to dieting, although you did have to work out a lot. So I did hurt my knee. I went there 3 times, 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I think I went there 3 or 4 times, and I every single time I came away with a super positive feeling. I really enjoyed it. Now it's called Movara. I think the license with the Biggest Loser resort expired after a while, so they're no longer associated with the Biggest Loser resort. I still really love the idea of it. You spend half a day hiking, and then you have swimming or you have indoor activities. They have a spa. The people who run the place are super fantastic, like the nicest people I've ever met in my life. The food was amazing. I learned a lot about cooking and self-care. I made a lot of friends there. I developed a really good community, so I still have really positive feelings about it. But I did hurt my knee the last time I was there hiking, and I was going downhill too fast, and it's entirely my fault. They warned us not to go downhill, and I was like, "I'm gonna do it anyway," because of hubris, and so I did strain my knee a little bit. I don't think it was a serious thing, but because of that, I think also that contributed to imbalances in my body. So my trainer the long story is that my I found a trainer when I moved to England after leaving Hong Kong during COVID. I did 2 international moves during COVID, and when I moved to England, I did find a trainer. Her name is Sophie. I will link her Instagram below. She works at Buzz Gym in Oxford. She was amazing, and she helped me so much to reverse diet, so to be able to bring my calorie intake back up slowly in a measured way, so I was getting all my nutrients and eating a good amount of food every day and not feeling like I was depriving myself. And she also really helped me build muscle. She helped program me and she really understood my imbalances. And she would teach me the right technique and everything from like literally like how to position my foot while I was doing deadlifts or as I was doing squats or as I was working with on a landmine. There are these like things. A landmine is like a when you take a barbell and you put it into a thing that's on the floor and it hinges. She taught me all of these things, and slowly, my imbalances have started to improve, and so I owe a tremendous debt to her, and she was in New York for the first time this week, so I hung out with her. I took her to my gym in New York, and I think it was so fun to see her again. I do think there's I think that I've never been to physical therapy, but I do think that personal training is under-leveraged when it comes to rebuilding and improving your own balance and fixing some things that have just feel like wrong, right? For a long time, I was like, "Oh, well, I just have a bad hip." And the truth is, sure, maybe genetically, I may have hip problems in the future, but at my age, I think I should start working towards strengthening the things around the hip, or I can do my best through building muscle and through mobility to help reinforce places where I'm weak. And the best way I have found to do that is through personal training and through weight training. So she was in town. After the gym, we went to get Los Tacos number 1, which are delicious. It's in Chelsea Market. If you ever come to New York and you like tacos, I would definitely recommend going there. So, yeah, I've had a lot of really fun eating and drinking and socializing this week. So, no wonder I was exhausted on Saturday. I think on Saturday, I slept a lot. I got up in the morning, I did some crochet, I worked on this a little bit, and I watched some YouTube videos. And I think around 2 o'clock, I, like, lay down. I am not a napper, but I think at 2 o'clock I lay down and I just fell asleep until 4, and then I woke up and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to sleep at night, but then again at night, I was exhausted. So I think I was exhausted. Exhausted for a good reason, though. Well, that is what I've got today. I'm gonna keep on plugging away at this project. I might put it aside and then come back to it, put it aside and come back to it. What's beautiful about a small piece-based stash busting project like this is that you can always put it away and you're not attached. It doesn't have to be attached to a lot of balls and skeins of yarn. You know, to put it in a project bag. I can just fold this up, put it to my left, and then come back to it anytime. So I'm gonna finish off this hexagon. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna keep working on this. I hope you're having a great weekend. I hope you have a great week planned, and I'll see you next time.